picture this. You are standing in the bedroom of a complete stranger.
Okay, just totally invading their space.
Right, totally. But they aren't there. You've never met them. You're just looking around at the physical space, like the art on the wall, the way their shoes are arranged, or, completely scattered everywhere.
Right, the specific titles of the books stacked on their nightstand.
Exactly. And the question is, if you paid close enough attention, could you accurately describe their deepest psychological makeup just from, well, the objects in that room?
I mean, it sounds like a parlor trick, right? Or something out of a cheap detective novel. But our psychology doesn't just live invisibly inside our heads. We constantly leak our internal wiring out into the physical world.
We leave footprints.
Yeah, exactly. We leave undeniable behavioral residue everywhere we go.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. If you are joining us right now, you are the learner, and our ultimate mission today is mapping out the invisible architecture of exactly who we are.
It's a huge mission.
It is. We're looking at how psychologists basically attempt to map out and categorize the infinite, beautiful messiness of human behavior.
And we have some incredibly rich materials on the table to guide this map-making process today. We're going deep into Chapter 22 of the textbook Discovering Psychology 2.0.
Right, that's the one by Edward Diener and Richard E. Lucas.
That's the one. And to ground that textbook theory in some actual practical application, we're pairing it with this fascinating set of lecture notes and visual slides from a university course.
Oh, Dr. Riordon's class, General Psychology 101 and Intro to Psych 105.
Yeah, Dr. Riordon's slides are fantastic for visualizing this stuff.
So if you've ever wondered why you act totally out of character in certain situations, or, how that stranger could supposedly figure you out just by looking at your bedroom clutter.
This deep dive is going to be incredibly revealing.
But to understand the really sophisticated predictive models we use today, we kind of have to look at how this field started, which is honestly a bit absurd.
Oh, completely. Because early pioneers in this, guys like Gordon Allport and Henry Odbert, they didn't start in some state-of-the-art laboratory.
No, they literally started in the library with a standard dictionary.
Right. They operated on what's called the lexical hypothesis. And the core philosophy here is actually quite beautiful when you think about it.
How so?
Well, it suggests that the most critical differences between people, like the behavioral quirks that matter most for our survival, our mating, our social functioning, they naturally get encoded into our everyday language over centuries.
Oh, I see. So if a behavioral difference is vital to human interaction, our ancestors eventually just had to invent a word for it.
Exactly. We can't measure what we don't define. To understand today's models, we have to look at how these pioneers first tried to just put words to behavior.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the lexical hypothesis is basically saying that humanity crowdsourced the very first psychology test just by inventing adjectives.
Yeah, thousands of years of gossiping about each other, basically.
Right. But before we even get to those words, Dr. Riordan's notes mention that for something to be considered a real trait, it has to meet some foundational criteria, right?
Yes, absolutely crucial point. Dr. Riordan highlights that traits must show consistency and stability.
Meaning what?
So consistency means you act the same across different spheres: home, work, public, private. And stability means that the trait remains relatively constant over time. Like who you are at age 30 should roughly reflect who you are at 40 and 50.
Got it. So back to the dictionary. How many words are we talking about here?
The sheer volume of that crowdsourced data is staggering. When Allport and Odbert opened that dictionary in the 1930s, they were staring at roughly 4,500 distinct words describing human quirks.
4,500.
Yeah, and Dr. Riordan's slide visualizes this beautifully. Picture this massive, chaotic cloud of descriptive words floating on a screen. Words like friendly, sociable, demanding.
Arrogant, kind, careless, just a massive cloud. But I mean, 4,000 adjectives is a completely unworkable data set. You can't build a rigorous scientific model out of a word cloud.
Which is exactly why researchers had to look for the invisible gravity pulling those words together. Because if you look closely at Dr. Riordan's slide, those floating words aren't entirely independent.
Right, they kind of cluster.
Yes, friendly and sociable naturally drift into the same orbit. Arrogant and demanding form their own little cluster. So researchers like Paul Costa and Jeff McCrae eventually used a statistical technique called factor analysis to mathematically prove this.
Okay, factor analysis, basically condensing the chaos.
Exactly. They mathematically condensed thousands of messy adjectives down into a universally measurable system of 5 independent structural dimensions.
The gold standard of personality psychology. the five-factor model, or, as most people know it, by the acronym OCEAN.
Right. Openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Now, a lot of people treat these like rigid boxes. We love those online quizzes that tell us we are like a type A or an introvert, like it's a blood type.
Oh, people love the neat little boxes.
Yeah, but the textbook is very clear about this concept of continuous distributions. People aren't rigid types. We don't fit into binary boxes.
Right. Massive population samples show that we all exist on a sliding scale for every single one of these 5 traits. Most of the population naturally clusters somewhere in the statistical middle.
So the easiest way to visualize how these continuous distributions actually dictate our lives isn't to look at some sterile chart. We need to look at them in motion.
Yes. Imagine walking into a massive, highly stressful family Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh boy.
Right. The way you navigate that chaotic house is entirely governed by where you fall on the ocean spectrum.
Okay, let's use that Thanksgiving scenario to map this out. You walk through the front door, the house is loud, it's packed with relatives. How you react to that wall of noise is going to be driven by the E in ocean, extraversion.
And most people mistakenly think extroversion is just about whether you like people or not. But it's actually an orientation toward external energy and reward.
So a high score, the classic extrovert, they thrive on that chaotic holiday energy.
Totally. They are immediately in the kitchen, assertive, loud, just soaking up the stimulation. But a low scorer, the introvert, finds that exact same environment intensely draining. They might retreat to a quiet corner or step outside.
And the textbook cites this fascinating 2019 study by Rain and colleagues that perfectly captures the introvert's survival strategy here.
Oh, the rereading study.
Yes. They looked at individuals who score low on extraversion but high on neuroticism, and they found these people deliberately use the immersive rereading of familiar books as a quote-unquote risk-free pathway to fulfill their social needs.
The mechanism there is brilliant because the brain still craves social connection, right? But a loud party triggers way too much anxiety.
So by retreating to a bedroom during Thanksgiving to reread a favorite novel, they get the neurological warmth of connecting with characters they already know intimately.
Exactly, completely bypassing the unpredictable social friction of real relatives.
Speaking of friction, let's talk about the A agreeableness. You are sitting at the dinner table and your stubborn uncle brings up a highly controversial political topic.
We've all been there. And where you fall on the agreeableness scale dictates your immediate instinct in that moment. High scorers prioritize social harmony above almost everything else.
So they're compassionate, forgiving.
And they will actively try to diffuse the tension to save the dinner, but extreme low scorers are fundamentally uncooperative. They view interactions as battles to be won.
So they will aggressively assert their own rights and opinions, happily ruining the pie course to prove they are intellectually superior.
Exactly. Then we have N, neuroticism, which measures emotional instability and sensitivity to negative feelings. Let's say the turkey is taking an hour longer than expected to cook.
Panic ensues.
For the high scorer in neuroticism, yes, they are catastrophizing. Chronically anxious, convinced the entire holiday is ruined, maybe worrying the undercooked bird is going to give everyone food poisoning.
While the low scorer on the exact same couch is perfectly calm during the crisis, they just shrug, grab another dinner roll, and remain completely unfazed.
Right. And we can't forget C, conscientiousness. This is the underlying engine of self-discipline.
So the person who meticulously planned the menu 3 weeks in advance and created a flawless cooking schedule.
Off the charts in conscientiousness. But the relative who promised to bring the ice completely forgot until they were halfway there and showed up an hour late empty-handed. That is the extreme low end. Impulsive, hedonistic, acting entirely in the spur of the moment.
Finally, we have O, openness, capturing intellectual curiosity. When the side dishes come out, the high scorer is the highly imaginative, untraditional one eagerly trying the bizarre experimental oyster stuffing someone brought.
While the low scorer strongly prefers familiar routines and demands the traditional plain mashed potatoes they've eaten every year since childhood.
Looking at it dynamically like that reveals how these aren't just fun labels.
Not at all. They predict massive life outcomes. Consider a 2023 meta-analysis published in the Psychological Bulletin regarding the conspiratorial mind.
Oh, this is interesting. How do personality traits predict whether someone believes in conspiracy theories?
Well, the researchers found that individuals who score on the extreme low end of both agreeableness and conscientiousness are deeply correlated with displaying social threat delusions.
Wait, really? Low agreeableness and low conscientiousness.
Yeah, and if we break down the mechanism, it makes perfect sense. Low agreeableness creates a baseline cynicism. You fundamentally distrust other people's motives, including scientists and institutions. You assume everyone is manipulative.
And then when you pair that baseline cynicism with low conscientiousness,
You get a lack of rigorous, disciplined fact-checking. You reject the established consensus because you are disagreeable, but you lack the meticulous conscientiousness required to properly verify the alternative theories you find online.
wow. So the traits literally architect a reality where conspiracies thrive. I mean, I have to say, I actually found the broadness of the ocean categories a bit problematic, though.
How so?
I want to push back on how psychologists use these global labels. If I tell you I score high on extroversion, that feels incredibly blurry. Does that mean I'm a loud, obnoxious partier? Or does it just mean I'm a deeply warm, friendly person who likes deep conversations over coffee? Treating extroversion as one massive blob seems to obscure all the critical internal nuances.
Well, the field of psychology completely shares that concern. Relying only on the 5 broad dimensions is like looking at a map of the world that only shows continents.
Right. You can't navigate with that.
No, to actually navigate, you need to zoom in closer to see the whole picture, the cities and streets. And this is what Dr. Riordon's slides introduce as the facet approach.
The facet approach.
Yeah, it breaks down each of those massive, broad dimensions into finer, lower-level units.
The slides actually lay this out with striking precision. Extroversion isn't just one thing. It's a constellation of specific subtraits or facets. Gregariousness, warmth, assertiveness, excitement-seeking.
And neuroticism breaks down into highly distinct facets, too. Anxious, angry, depressed, impulsive, vulnerable.
This facet map actually resolves a huge contradiction for me, because it explains how a single person can be the absolute life of the party, meaning they score off the charts on the gregarious facet. But that exact same person can totally freeze and panic when asked to give a 5-minute public toast.
Right, because they completely lack the assertiveness facet.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is that we are complex configurations of these microfacets. Looking at this granular level is what saves the treat model from being an overly simplistic buzzword. It allows clinicians to make highly accurate vocational and clinical predictions.
Which brings us to the Sutton BMI study from 2011. I found this longitudinal study deeply unsettling, to be honest.
The 50-year tracking.
Yes, they tracked physical health outcomes, specifically body mass index, over a 50-year period. And they found that a specific facet of neuroticism predicted weight fluctuations over half a century.
The impulsivity facet.
Right. And I read that and thought, wait, if a facet like impulsivity predicts BMI over 50 years, are we just biologically hardwired to fail our diets? Regardless of willpower, it feels terribly deterministic.
It sounds deterministic until you look at the actual mechanism of action. The study found that neuroticism as a broad category was somewhat useful, sure, but its specific lower-level facet impulsivity was the single strongest predictor.
But how does that not mean we're just doomed by our biology?
Because the biological hardwiring isn't dictating your weight directly. It's dictating your baseline drive to act on immediate cravings.
Ah, okay. So it's about the compounding interest of friction.
Precisely. Someone low in impulsivity experiences a brief moment of mental friction before eating a donut. They pause, consider their long-term health goals, and often walk away. But someone high in impulsivity completely lacks that braking mechanism.
The urge arises, and the action immediately follows.
Yes. And over the course of 50 years, and roughly 50,000 meals, that lack of an internal brake compounds into significantly higher body weight.
It's like an invisible hand guiding our daily micro-choices. And Dr. Riordon's slides point out that researchers are still expanding this high-definition map even beyond the big 5.
Oh, definitely. You have the Hexaco model, which adds a crucial 6th dimension, honesty, humility.
Sincere versus manipulative, basically.
Right, separating the truly sincere, fair individuals from the highly agreeable but secretly narcissistic ones. You also have Eysenk's biological emphasis and hyperspecific traits like Machiavellianism, need for cognition, and alexithymia.
The architecture is just vast and mathematically sound. But just as psychologists felt they had finally perfected the formula for predicting human behavior.
The entire establishment was thrown into crisis.
The plot twist. Because if our underlying traits and facets are so incredibly stable and they dictate our micro-choices over a 50-year timeline, why do we constantly act out of character?
Which triggers one of the most vicious clashes in the history of the field, the person-situation debate.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So in the late 20th century, a renowned psychologist named Walter Mischel published a devastating critique. The entire bedrock of trait theory relies on cross-situational consistency, right? The idea that you act relatively the same at work, at home, and at the bar.
Right.
Well, Mischel looked at the massive amounts of data and argued that cross-situational consistency is largely an illusion. He showed that the second the environment changes, we regularly abandon our supposedly stable traits.
Let's look at the academic cheating example as the battleground for this debate.
Hmm.
There was a 2010 APA study using detection software like Turnitin on college essays,
Right, identifying scholastic cheaters.
and the trait psychologists found a clear pattern. Low agreeableness and low conscientiousness serve as significant statistical predictors for students plagiarizing.
And the internal logic of that holds up perfectly. Low conscientiousness means the student lacks the discipline to actually study, and pairing it with low agreeableness acts as the catalyst.
Because they lack the interpersonal empathy to care if their cheating ruins the grading curve for everyone else. They have the motive and entirely lack the moral friction.
It seems like a slam dunk for trait theory. But Mischel steps in and points to the glaring flaw.
Which is?
That very same disagreeable, impulsive student might cheat on a difficult math exam, and Dr. Riordon uses a great visual slide here of a hand palming a tiny handwritten cheat sheet.
Oh yeah, I saw that slide.
Yet that exact same student might strictly follow every single complex rule when they step onto the field to play competitive sports.
Wow. That really challenges the core of our identity. I have to ask you, listening right now, do you behave like a completely different person when you're hanging out with your closest friends versus sitting in a strict university classroom?
Mischel's argument was that human choices are deeply influenced by institutional values, immediate contextual cues, and situational engineering.
Like the 2012 report, Dual Pathways to a Better America, which really validates the power of the environment. If a university wants to stop cheating, screening out low conscientiousness students is horribly inefficient.
Right. Situational engineering, simply changing the testing environment, removing the opportunity, changes the behavior instantly, regardless of internal traits.
So who won the debate?
Well, the ultimate resolution wasn't one side destroying the other. As Dr. Riordon's slides explicitly note, it's not traits versus situation, it's situation plus traits.
Situation plus traits.
Behavior is an intricate interactionist blend of our raw internal dispositions colliding with environmental forces.
Okay, so knowing that our behavior is this dynamic collision,
Yeah.
how does this actually manifest in our tangible daily lives over time? We come back to the opening question of today's deep dive.
We come back to behavioral residue. Traits aren't just abstract psychological concepts locked invisibly in our brains. They bleed into the physical world.
The 2002 study by Samuel Gosling, A Room with a Q, this is one of the most brilliant experimental designs in modern psychology.
Oh, it's so clever.
The researchers basically had observers walk into the college dorm rooms and personal offices of undergraduate students. The observers never met the occupants. They were completely blind to who lived there. They just looked at the physical space.
They analyzed the clutter, the books on the shelves, the style of the art, and they were asked to rate the personality of the occupant based purely on that behavioral residue.
And their accuracy was astonishing. Strangers accurately guessed their personalities just by looking at the room. Highly conscientious people literally force order onto their surroundings. They leave a wake of organization behind them.
While high openness scores leave behind diverse collections of unusual books and eclectic art, but the physical space is only half the equation. Our traits also dictate how we navigate the social world, and this is where social learning provides the final filter.
Because core biological traits are just the foundational clay, right? Environmental feedback, the rewards, punishments, cultural modeling refines that clay.
Yes, the 2015 APA Handbook chapter by Mickelenser and Shaver highlights this beautifully regarding early attachment patterns. Early environmental support sculpts a child's natural temperament.
Like an anxious child, biologically, their baseline is highly sensitive to threat.
Right, but if they're raised in a deeply supportive, secure environment, social learning teaches them to channel that intense, buzzing, anxious energy into something productive, like meticulous academic organization.
Social learning translates raw genetic tendencies into polished, highly adaptable social skills for adulthood.
Exactly. And we are seeing this play out right now in our modern digital lives. There's a fascinating 2019 study by Thomas and colleagues looking at introversion and social media use.
So the baseline trait of introversion predicts a high preference for solitude. In the past, that meant simply staying isolated.
But the environment changed. The students learn to use social media as a learned tool to carefully regulate their social exposure. They can engage, but entirely on their own terms, shielded by a screen.
The internal trait meets the situational tool, guided by learned social behavior.
It perfectly encapsulates everything. Who we are is a dynamic, lifelong collaboration.
So what does this all mean? We have mapped an incredible amount of territory today. We started by looking at pioneers, staring down a dictionary of adjectives, mathematically condensing that chaos into the continuous distributions of ocean.
We drilled down into facets.
Right, we survived Mitchell's situational critique and finally saw how our genetic clay is sculpted by social environments and leaves physical footprints. Which leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
If human traits leave undeniable behavioral residue in physical spaces like dorm rooms, and social learning dictates our highly specific digital habits,
Yeah.
is it possible that the AI algorithms running our smart homes and analyzing our browser tabs already understand our five-factor profile better than our closest friends or even ourselves?
Oh, wow. That is a terrifyingly plausible reality.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible architecture of the world around you. And the next time you walk into a stranger's room, pay close attention to the footprints.